Welcome to part one of my interview with Jim Gisrel, and thanks for checking it out. Also, I want to recommend checking out the other episodes, and I kind of want to apologize for the lack of content. I had my wisdom teeth out, I was dealing with that, and the end of regular school, which is like exams and stuff, and the start of summer school, but part two of the interview will come up. All right, on with the show. Hello, and welcome to Callbacks episode 4. I have a very special guest today. He is a creator of the Internet Newgrounds Flash cartoon Cletus the Fetus, co-creator of the Internet cartoon Nockforce, which created Ian Jones Cordy, who Cordy would go on to create the Cartoon Network show OK Kyo Let's Be Heroes. He's a YouTuber and movie critic who's covered indie darlings, obscure films, foreign films, marathons of various directors to more contemporary directors to old Hollywood directors, as well as his general movies reviews are always great insight on what makes a film work and what doesn't. He's also a member of the Pizza Party podcast, a pop culture and mostly covering animation podcast started by cartoon reviewer Pan Pizza. He's a recurring guest on the POS podcast and has been a guest on various other podcasts. As well, he does research for YouTubers like SaberSarks for their various videos, as well as he hosts a weekly Saturday movie news live stream. And it's just a wonderful and kind person, and I was super glad to have him on. My guest is Jim Gisrel. How you doing this morning,
Oh,
Jim?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's nice to have you on as like my first guest. Just because it's like probably my favorite podcaster. You're up there. I mean, because it's like
Oh,
when I
thank you.
started listening to the Pizza Party podcast, like when you came on, like I'm like, oh, I like this guy. I'm gonna start listening to it because him.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right, so could you talk about growing up in Baltimore?
In general or like with
Yeah, in general.
in general? It was cool, I guess. I kind of grew up like in a suburbia that was right like I could walk to the city. Like I think my parents' address says Baltimore, Maryland, but it doesn't look like The Wire or something like that. It looks like suburbia. But we were like right there. And it was I don't know, it was interesting. I think I was bored a lot, to be honest with you. But I had a decent childhood, got to read a lot of comics because my dad and I were both really into comic books in the 90s boom. So, depending on your perspective, that was a good or bad time for 90s comics. And just a lot of walking around, a lot of just like looking for stuff to do. But it was also towards the end of my teens, it was a little more creative because there was like a punk scene in Towson, which was sort of close to where I was as well. And I guess I was sort of in a band and
You were in a band?
I was in a couple things. There's no recordings no recordings of me in any of the band. I played bass and like, so I was in a couple bands. One, we opened at the local venue that like all the bands played at, and we were called, was it Dookie Day? Terrible name. And
You did.
our ideas were like kind of half-assed. Like one of them was, I remember we covered Tearing Up My Heart, but it was like, because it was just me singing and a guy with a guitar, and we made a rock version of Tearing Up My Heart, which kind of worked. I remember people really liked that. And then I came up with the idea of, what if we play Wild Thing backwards? Like looked at the chords, and we just like, the guy was a good enough guitar player. He was like, let's just play it in reverse. And he was like, that is a riff. And I think we wrote like 3 songs going like, what's a riff that everyone knows? Let's just do it backwards. I remember one of the shows we played, everyone looked at us and some guy was like, all your songs sound familiar. What the fuck? And like, he was like suspicious. Like he came onto our genius plan. I forget all our stuff, but yeah, it was in that, and I like rehearsed with a couple bands that like, much like developing an idea, there's a bunch of bands that got stuck in development hell. There's one that like was almost called Elton John, that was like which is, at the time we thought was really funny, that we were like this grungy punk band called Elton John. I don't know. I don't think it never stuck, and I don't think it went anywhere. And same with there's one I was in called Pemphigus that we never played any shows. And I could have been in the biggest band in the scene if I hadn't gone to college, which I think I made the right choice. But they were like, "We'd have you audition, but you're gonna leave in 2 months. So like, what's the fucking point?" You know what I mean? So that was cool. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. So, but it was a good time. It was a lot of boredom. It was a lot of trying to finding things to do. I discovered a bunch of stuff, and I guess one of the big things I did to help me get into movies is in 1998, the first AFI Top 100 came out. And although even at the time, and I preface this before I go into this, I never have thought the AFI Top 100 is an actual good list. But I recognize that. And this is true for any best of all time list, for anyone who's listening later or anything, is don't get mad at what's number one. That's like, who cares? It's like a cliche to get mad at that. Look at what on this list I haven't seen. Because if something's number five, you're like, I think that's a movie I should have at least be aware of. You know what I mean? And so I made it my mission that summer to try to see as many of those movies as I could. And I got pretty far, but then I had a perspective on like the entire history of film because they have, or American film, I should say, because I knew, pretty major films from the 50s. I knew a couple major films I knew all the hits. So I had like ways, I had like, and then it would like, oh, I sort of like film noir. Maybe I'll go this way. Or, oh, I sort of like this director. And that, because I like had not a ton of friends, I could commit to a project like that, and just
Hmm.
like dive in. And they made another one of the AFIs, I think in 2007. I might have the year wrong. And I wish they'd make another one. I think they're due for it. And I'd probably make a video going through my whole thing with them. But
Like every AFI ever.
I don't think I do every AFI ever. I would just talk about like that summer and
Oh, okay.
how I bought a magazine and like the lessons I learned from it and what films I think are I don't know. I look at those as teaching tools, which is what I looked at it at the time. And it was I just felt like I haven't seen a lot of these. I need to learn up. And I remember, yeah. And I don't know. I was lucky growing up because I had parents who were like, we need to find the right space for this kid, because I think I've talked about this in my New Mutants video. Because my I think my parents were like, if we don't like guide this kid, this is not gonna go well. And I think also because I wasn't really into drugs or anything, but that was always a concern in Baltimore. So I think they were like, okay, we have to like point this kid in the right direction. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I think because in my freshman, summer of between my freshman and sophomore year of high school, my mom was like, well, let's not put him in. I could have gone to a film camp with kids my age, which was probably be a better thing for me socially. But what my mom did do instead was like, why don't you just go to this college film production class? And I was like 14. And I'll call them. She called them and said, look, this kid, no, I was 15. I'm sorry. I was 15, right? Yes, I was 15, going on 16. Because my birthday's in August. And she was like, she called the teacher and said, look, this kid knows a lot about movies. If you really, I'll pay. I'm not asking for a reduced rate. I'm not asking for special treatment. Just let my son be in this class. And he did it. And the school was like, yeah, okay. I mean, and so so that was like kind of a big thing because I had to sort of, one, be mature for my age, because no one knew how young I was until like certain certain times it would come up. I think they asked me, the South Park movie came out that summer, and I said, "Yeah, I did." My dad had to go with me because they weren't gonna let me in otherwise. And this one guy looked at me and like, "What do you mean you couldn't get in?" And he was like, "How old are you?" And I realized I like shouldn't have said that. Or the only other time is when Eyes Wide Shut came out. The teacher asked me to go get him coffee, and when I came back, the discussion on that film was over because he was like, "I don't want to do this with him." Which by the way, I as at the time I was a little offended. Now I'm like, I support that decision.
I just
But
imagine it's like they're just talking about like all the scenes where it's like secret orgies and like they start pulling out their
yeah,
mask and stuff.
yeah,
That's
I don't want to discuss this with the underage kid. I get it, but
Yeah.
they were nice, but it was like I think a lot of my
Hmm.
probably why I'm not as nostalgic maybe as people my age and stuff is I was had to kind of prove like I was always against like people who were perceived to be smarter or know more, so I had to like
Hmm.
be like, oh well, I know stuff too, and I had to prove it. I couldn't just be like
Hmm.
I couldn't just be like, "Hey, Ghostbusters is cool," which I think is probably why my approach is different, is because of that. And I was at Towson University, and I did a couple classes while in high school, and I learned, like, 10 years later, I didn't know this, and my friend Matt Berry, who I work with on Lost Film File and stuff, and his
Hmm.
films and all that stuff, he was like I told him all the classes I went to there, and he was like, "Jim, you were a class away from doing the entire film program there." And I was like, "Oh, didn't know that. Okay, that's neat." But so I sort of took film production before I went to college for it, which was cool. But it did like change my view because I remember seeing like Days of Heaven, which is this Terrence Malick film, and it's sort of like I remember coming out of that in like a daze. I was like, I don't what just happened. It was just like this never seen a movie like that, and it just I don't know, it was almost like a big album of your youth, Days of Heaven, seeing it in a film history class because I knew 70s cinema, but I didn't know that movie, and it really hit me. And it's still a film that I don't think it's perfect, but it just I don't know. Sometimes movies just hit you regardless of
Yeah, yeah.
and that one was like the perfect time. And I remember a friend who I was in the class with and we talked about it. We just like walk I just walked him back to his dorm and we didn't say anything. Not because we were mad, just because I remember him being like, he was like, "I'll see ya." I don't know. And he's just like, it was like pretty cool. It was you don't get a lot of time because I remember later I saw him. He was like, "That was really good." Like we were just like, because we didn't know what we were in for. I think.
That was interesting. So, did you take like any film stuff in high school, or was that like not available at the time?
It was not. I mean, I went to like a specialized school and they didn't have
Hmm.
that sort of stuff. I'd write stories and I had writing teachers who helped me with that. And I had one story that actually did sort of well, which I don't have, but it was like as much of a hit if you can have a hit in high school, which is
Hmm.
sure. But there was thoughts of me publishing it and stuff. It was like a about this girl and she meets up with someone and they have sort of a night and it's like semi-romantic and you never learn the gender of the other person and
Hmm.
everyone was like kind of surprised. I was like 14 or something. People were a little surprised by it. And I'm not like, I wasn't really gay or anything like that, but I think it was like more androgynous than people were ready for, I think.
Hmm.
And there was like a so they I think cuz I did that like my freshman year, they made sure I was in good English classes because they're like, I think there's something to this kid, which was good because I was able to develop like writing and stuff and like take on challenges and stuff like that. It never got published because no one said, "Here's a place you can go." It's sort it's sort of like it's sort of like you should it's like if you hear a band and they're like, "You should be signed." And then go, "Where?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't just sounded good." So, it was like something like that. But I remember it was just like it got like passed around the school, which was a very small school. So again, like, but I remember at the time I thought it was really cool because I'd never written something where like people were like, "Oh, what the fuck, kid? Where'd you come up with this concept?" And um, but yeah, sorry
So,
if I'm like putting in too
no,
much,
no,
but
no, no. This is all fascinating. This is all.
okay,
I'm loving. I'm liking this. Like you're answering the questions before I ask them.
okay, good, good, good.
So,
Okay,
so what leads you to go to film school in New York?
I think it was because New York was closer, and anytime we visit New York, I thought New York was the most amazing thing because I did watch I watched a lot of talk shows then, and it just seemed like so cool. Like if David Letterman or even Regis and Kathy Lee or someone would talk about going to like Adina and DeLuca, which is not, it's a chain, it's not a cool place. I just thought that was the neatest thing in the universe. Or if I just knew like it was closer. LA didn't see, I've actually never been to
Covered.
California
I
to this
also haven't
day.
been, but
I need to. I mean, No, I should look, I have every reason to go.
Mhm.
I've been told if I go, I'd probably get, like, a nice tours of places. I obviously, people who anyone listening to this is thinking, "Yes, I know the people who would be there who would be nice to me and stuff," but it just hasn't worked out. But I know if I'd go, I'd overdo it, like, I'd go to every movie anyway,
That's
I've
interesting.
already told my wife if we go, I I wanna spend several days just going to movie theaters I've heard about my whole life, and she was just like, "That does not sound fun for me, like, you're just gonna go," like, I wanna go to the anyway, I have, like, a whole we
It's
could
like
do
a
a
bucket
podcast.
list thing, right?
We could do a podcast on things I imagine I would do in LA, but I'm sure everyone in LA was like, "What is wrong with this guy? Like, that sounds like a horrible trip." So I haven't really thought it out. Anyway, sorry, New York, not LA, but LA just seemed too far. But New York seemed attainable. It was right. It was 4 hours away. All the I'd always heard stories of New York. I grew up thinking Spike Lee was really cool. Um,
Spike Lee is really cool.
well, he is really cool. Thank you, Austin. I'm sorry. He is still really cool. He's
Did
Spike
you
Lee
see
will
him? I
always
just
be cool.
we're gonna date this a little bit, but
That's fine.
did you see what he did on a Saturday where he went out on the street and did
The champagne?
the champagne?
Yeah, I will say he does a lot of more local stuff than people realize. He's really cool. He was happy. No, he right near where I live, when Prince died, he had a party like right outside one of the grocery stores I go to, and he painted a garage that apparently no one uses with Prince's face on it, and it's still there. And he does stuff like that all the time. He's like, "Who's using this house, the side of this house?" And I'll call them, and be like, "Can I put a mural here for this artist?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, Spike Lee can do that, sure." And like
Yeah,
he's an awesome
yeah. There
he,
was
he
like I was watching one of the Treehouse of Horrors, and it was like the end of the world, and everyone was getting on a plane, and Homer and Bart end up on the worst plane, and I'm like, wait, and then it's like Spike Lee. I'm like, wait, why is Spike Lee on the worst plane? I don't
oh
get this joke. Spike Lee's a cool guy.
I
It's like Tom Arnold and like Rosie O'Donnell or
I think
whatever
people
are on there.
the thing with Spike Lee that I think people got upset because and I think he's not I don't love it when filmmakers complain about I didn't win this award or something, but I will say, when you direct Do the Right Thing, which I think is maybe up there was one of the great American movies of all time, and you don't get as many acclaim as he probably should have. I'm a little like we should have hailed him more when he was starting out, and I think he resented it. And I was like, I don't know. It's not how I would act, maybe, but he's not unjustified. You know what I mean? He still had a. I think he should have been embraced more, and I think a lot of people took that the wrong way, and I get it. But I'm also like, yeah, but like look at the movies, what he was making in the 90s, like Malcolm X and Do the Right Thing and all. It's like they're still like really good movies. So, it's not like anyway. He is still cool. Sorry. But I
Mhm.
thought Spike Lee was cool. I even thought, and this was before I knew as much about the early 90s, but I thought Woody Allen was really neat. But now I have different
Yeah, it's
opinions on that.
no, that's okay.
But a lot of that stuff, and I just thought that was the place to go. And yeah, and I went when I saw because I went to school visual arts. They did a really good open house thing the time I went at least. And I was just like and I think they were gonna let you shoot right away, whereas NYU you have to wait a few years to make anything, which I was like, well, first off, I have done production, so it seemed a little silly for me to wait 2 years or something and work on, upper kids' films because I'm like, well, I'll still work on which I did. I actually did do that, work on other people's films. But at the same time, I want to start developing, working on stuff. So that was part of the reason all that went
So,
down.
did any of those people you like work on go like further in it? Like to be
Uh
big, I guess?
um not I think some did, not as much. One of the guys, Will Wedig, who I worked with a lot and helped him write a feature, which I don't know what it got made. I don't know how I think it got released somewhere, but I'm called like Townies, and I think I have a DVD of it, but I don't have the rights to like upload it or anything. But he's done like commercial work, and I think he worked on some. like a Ben 10 thing at some point.
Oh, is it the Ben 10 movie?
I don't see, you know what the thing is? I know he did something with Alex Winter, and I often get I'm gonna look him up now because, I you know what? He had kind of an Alex Winter energy, and I sort of remember them doing something together, but again, I might have just screwed that up. So if I did,
Mhm.
Will, I apologize if he's listening to this. He did have a film that went into theaters that it was something called Team Tune he did? Okay, never mind, maybe he didn't do anything. He did a thing called Forged, which got into theaters. He did Sports Illustrated swimsuit stuff. He did yeah, but I guess I don't know what Team Tune is. I don't know why he thought he did I don't know what I'm thinking. Anywho, yeah, I don't know why he
Ugh.
thought he did that, but
Oh,
he did some stuff, actually, I'm sorry, one guy, Matt Pollock, who I didn't know that well, but I ran a radio station there, and he was in student government, and we had some meetings, and at least when I messaged him to tell him I really liked his stuff, he was like, "Oh, yeah, oh, cool." Like, we're at least in that familiarity. Like, if I saw him on the street, we could have a conversation, but we're not best buds.
mhm.
But Matt Pollock, he directed most of the Adam Ruins Everything stuff.
Love
Um,
Adam Ruins Everything.
you what?
Oh, I know, yeah, I love that stuff. It's
Yeah. No, it's great, and it's really well directed and everything. And when I found out it was him, I wrote him a nice message, and he was like, "Oh, thanks, man." Like, because I think he was surprised because we weren't really on artistically the same wavelengths at all in school. So we weren't like we were kind of, you have your groups and all that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And he wasn't really we didn't engage. But yeah, so I guess yeah, I should have just said him. So he's of
No,
the
I
film.
like I like
What?
the I like the Ben 10 Alex Winter. What was his name? Matt Wyatt? No,
Oh, Will Wettig. Yeah,
Will Wet.
Will Wettig, he was different. He did stuff, and I worked more closely with him, and he was in my film students. But Matt, if you watch my film students, he's one of the guys in that. But Matt Pollock, he did Adam Ruins Everything, and
Mhm,
he does a lot of stuff with College Humor, and he directs a lot. Like me, he makes a lot of stuff. He's
mhm,
workaholic, so which is yeah, he's a cool guy. I'm sure that if someone else I forgot, I'm sorry because I know other people have like gone more in the executive sides and stuff like that. In
mhm.
terms of still making shit, Matt Pollock is, and then the animation side is is
Yeah,
obviously different.
yeah, so how did film school kinda lead into, like, Cletus the Fetus and, like, Nockforce?
Oh, okay. So I get into college is like 2002. Spirit Away is coming out, and I one of the other things about New York that I was really excited about is all the Oscar stuff and all the cool movies came out early there, and I was like, guess what I'm doing every single time it opens early, especially my freshman year, and I knew Spirit Away was coming out, and I was really excited. And when I got my dorm assignments, I was with this guy Zero, who that's the name he went by. Uh, but he knew Ian, and I told Zero, like he was a little shocked by like I am seeing Spirited Away. It was basically like, I'm seeing it that weekend, and he was like, and he was basically, and especially then, it was hard to calm me down to not see a movie like the second it came out sometimes because I was just so excited. And somehow Zero, I'm glad I listened to him one of the few times because when Kill Bill 1 came out, like, I literally went the first second I could see it. I was obnoxious. But with Spirit Away, I listened to him, and when I went to Spirit Away, Zero was like, "I wanna bring my friend," who was Ian, and so the 3 of us saw Spirit Away together, and it was a pretty amazing screening. I think we're the only people who weren't children or accompanying a child, and, the part where they're in the train and it's like really quiet. And I
Mhm.
noticed, I was like, you could literally like hear a pin drop. Like they were loud when the movie started, all the kids were loud and I was worried. And it was kind of one of those magical screenings where I was like, I actually saw Miyazaki's power over kids because the theater was packed because it was getting crazy good reviews and everybody just stopped as soon as it went on, and I didn't notice it until that scene because it was like the first time I saw it, so I was just so in it, it was
So you're
just
like, You were, what's it called? I guess in the zone or
Yeah, immersed, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah, I was just
that's it.
not thinking about, and I remember we were all that was another one where everyone was like, "Whoa." And I remember on the way home, I found the New York because what I used to do with the New York Times when I lived in Baltimore and a little in New York is they'd have full page ads for a movie, which was basically like a poster. And as soon as I realized that, my walls were covered with these newspaper ads because it was like, well, I can have a poster for something and it'll be this rare thing. But they were like film dork movies. So it wasn't like people would come to my room and like, why is Wonder Boys on your ceiling? I don't get this. But Spirit, I remember finding a Spirit Away ad on the way home, and then Ian and Zero and I lived together for the three of us, at least three to the second part of college, because we were all getting along. And oh, sorry, this is about Cletus the Fetus. But how I got into animation was like I would hang out at the animation studio, and it was so collaborative and so much fun. And I also would get into I was into animation, and I never really got out of it. I always thought it I was didn't look down on it as a medium like a lot of my filmmaking live action people did, I guess. And Cletus the Fetus, I think, was always an idea I had before because this kid in middle school brought in a turtle named Cletus, and I immediately just thought, "Oh, Cletus the Fetus." Sorry, I thought of Cletus the Fetus, and I kept developing it throughout high school, middle school, and high school. And there's one guy who I developed it with, but it was not what it became, which he
Mhm.
admits. But sometimes if he makes a post like, "Oh, I worked on this, but it never my version." The only thing that stayed the same was a fetus named Cletus, basically. But I think because I knew animators, I saw what was going on and I was like, I could make a cartoon. Okay, I think I can do this. And I think I wrote like a half-hour script, and Zero was like, "So, um, I don't know how to tell you this." Kind of thing. It was like, "I can't do this. I can't draw this. So you need to cut this down a lot." And I was like, "By how much?" And it was like a scene?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm stupid." Because I don't know what I thought, because I didn't go to animation class, so I didn't. No one sat down and go, "Do you know how many frames are in a second, bro? Like, do you know?" I didn't know.
Mhm.
But Zero drew all the characters because I can draw, but I just wasn't as confident. And he drew all the characters, and we did the pilot. And Ian was like around because he was curious because everyone was like, "What is Jim doing?" kind of thing. More in the animation side. In film, they were like, "What's this fucking idiot?" Like it was in film, it was like thought it was stupid. In animation, they're all like, "What is this guy doing?" Like, what? He's not an animation student. Like he's really into developing this Cleese the Fetus thing. And we did a pilot, which I think is still on the Cleese the Fetus YouTube. And I just put it up as a test, and that I sort of told a few people, and I said, "Don't tell anyone. This is a pilot. It was just a test." And I remember also I thought I showed it to a friend, and he's told me it sucked, and that was like devastating to no degree. I had to like take a walk for like 2 hours because I'd work. Animation takes a long time, and it took me like a week, and it isn't good. But what I should have taken from it is I did it. You know what I mean? If you ever make a short, just think I did it. Don't think it stunk. Think okay, but I did it though. And I should have.
Mhm.
But someone ripped it apart, and I think I made the theme song a separate time during a crazy snowstorm where we kept not having to go to school, and I was like, well, I'm gonna keep making the theme song. But yeah, so people were aware of it, and then we recorded a bunch of stuff, and I think Ian I knew he did RPG World and was sort of a name, but I also knew, oh, well, he knows how to do website stuff, so he helped with the website, and he got involved in that. And then it really geared up the summer between freshman and sophomore in college, and I was promoting it like crazy in Maryland, like putting up flyers all over Maryland, like to a ridiculous degree. And it was more of a hit in Maryland and Baltimore than it was in New York. It was sort of like Ian did the website for a bit, but it was sort of hard because I was in Baltimore, he was in Columbia, which is like 45 minutes away, and the internet wasn't great then, so we'd have to drive discs to his house. which was really inefficient, as you can tell. It wasn't like now you can just email someone something, you know what I mean? And we tried to do like onto a server and it would be too big. It was just like there was no way we could. So anyway, so another kid who was really hungry, Mike Anderson, took that over. But Ian still like would help with scripts and do stuff. And I liked working with him and him and Zero. And the show really, I was like that summer it really took off in Baltimore. But people were, when I came back, like surprised. There was some friction, I guess, with the live action people because I
Mhm.
think they didn't get it. At that time, it was different because I would also post it on Newgrounds, and just being on Newgrounds, just because you were a cartoon, you'd get thousands of views just for existing.
Mhm.
It wasn't like, oh, there's a new Cletus the Fetus. It was more like, oh, there's a cartoon that is here. It was an interesting period, but because I had a little bit of an online name, especially with the Flash cartoon, because I made so many, people would just. I think it's not a good show, but because there were so many people respected that I did it, you know. And then Nockforce happened right
Mhm.
out of college because we were. Sorry, this is really long. Apologies.
So yeah, I guess that would leads into the next point. So like, can we talk about like kind of the creation of Nockforce and like kind of pitching it to like Adult Swim?
Oh, okay. Well, it was just created like we were messing around, being stupid kids out of college, and
Mhm.
uh, we were kind of lucky because we made it. It launched literally it really launched like I think it was like almost to the day of when to the year we graduated, which is pretty. Nobody does that then. I Now it's more people launch YouTube channels and stuff. People weren't doing that. It was weird
Mhm.
at the time. But throughout the year, we were like making songs and stuff like that, and then we eventually just like messing around. We like doing that, and then it was originally going to be more of like what the episode one was, which was structured, had a plot, be actual cartoons. And then I think Ian was like, "What if we just record us talking because we're kind of funny, and we'll just take out bits and make these quickie things." And then that like happened really organically. The pitching thing, we didn't actually get to pitch, which I think we both regret. But what happened was he was at World Leaders doing not Venture Brothers originally, but then he got the job at Venture Brothers. And I think they saw that there was this guy doing stuff online. And so they were like, okay, this guy's already here. Kind of. I mean, I don't know how that went down because I'm hearing it secondhand, a lot of this, but we have this guy, he's making stuff. We could bring him in and develop it and make a pitch book. And then we would pitch it basically. And I don't know what I mean. I don't think that company's around anymore, but we would come into meetings. We would pick out the cartoons that we would want them to show, things like that. And I know they pitched it to various places, like I think it was Fox, Adult Swim, and I was trying to get them to do wherever the Spaceballs cartoon wound up, like Fuse, like because I was like, let's just get on. I don't even care where it is. I just
Uh,
yeah, we
Baseball. Oh boy, I mean,
yeah.
I remember seeing it like very a long time ago, and
It
maybe
was
you're lucky. Maybe you're.
they would only do the biggest things, which I think we both kind of I remember at the time wanted them to develop to pitch to
Mhm.
other places. And it didn't really go anywhere, but it was cool. Like, I got to go to the Christmas party because they're like, well, you're here a bunch, so you can, I would like go in for meetings and we'd help develop and stuff like that. And I also think because it was music as well, I think people saw the profitability in it. It just didn't. I don't know. I kind of wish we had gotten to pitch it, but I also think we were learning a lot, and we never got the episode thing down. And I'm sure people looked at it and go, "Well, these quickies are fun, but what's the show?" And I think that might have hurt it. But yeah, unfortunately, it didn't go as far. But there was a lot of talk about it. It did go on for months and months, trying to come up with ways to pitch it and who to pitch it to. And I only remember Adult Swim and Fox because Fox was trying to do a late night block for a long time, which didn't even happen then. I think it happened like 5 years later, something like that. I forget. I know it was pitched to several places, but it never. But I think they were also pitching it with other things, like a dumb. offensive hot dog thing or something, which I don't never understood. They never showed me what it was, but when people would describe it, it sounded horrible. So, if not for that dumb hot dog.
Just imagining that it was Sausage Party or something. That sausage part, it's like, man, it not only did it, take money away from those animators, but it also ruined the pitch for Nockforce.
Yeah, I don't think it was sausage, but if you wanna blame that, that's fine. I'm comfortable with that,
I'm also
you know?
thinking Ripping Friends had a whole thing with like a hot dog thing at the end, so I'm like, maybe it was that.
No, I
Then
don't
that
know.
could've
I don't know. It didn't seem like John K was there, but maybe.
now I kinda wanna talk more about your YouTube kind of, so
Okay.
why'd you wanna, do more of the movie reviews on YouTube?
I think because I think it was just because like, I liked making stuff. Well, part of it was, like, I make making stuff a lot. I wanted to make reviews and stuff, and I also looked at, like, what was going on, and I didn't love, like, what was on YouTube at the time for that stuff, and I thought, "Well, I can do older stuff," and I've always watched a bunch of different movies, and
Mhm.
so I think it just was something I wanted to pursue, and I think the Nockforce thing was gearing down. It was sort of like, "Well, I should do something," and there's, like, certain movies I would like to make a video about and things like that, and I just sorta, like, fell in I wouldn't say fell into it. I, like, developed it for 6, 7 months beforehand, and really, like, I shot a few that have never come out just for movies I still haven't reviewed. Like, I think there was a, Fellini movie called Roma, which I should because it has a really
Wait,
random
another
part.
different movie? There's another movie that's also just named Roma?
You know what? I didn't damn it. Damn it, why'd you have to say that? Now I feel like I should have done. Was it called Roma? Oh my god. Now I gotta
'Cause
look
wasn't
it.
that the Amazon movie from, like, 2 years ago, Roma?
No,
Or
Netflix.
oh, it was Netflix.
Is it? Oh, now anyway, it had this really random part that I just thought was, like, so funny. 'Cause, like, you watch this whole movie. Yeah, it was called Roma. Damn it.
So wait, there's 2
Uh,
movies out there called Roma?
yeah, but this one's about Rome, and I don't think
Mhm,
anyway, but it was like there's this random part where, like, you go through this whole movie and it's, like, stories around Rome, basically. It's like a anthology film.
mhm.
And towards the end, like, the movie literally goes like, "Gore Vidal, what do you think?" And he, like, turns around, like, eating dinner, and he, like, gives some opinions. I remember just being so like, it was a decent movie. I was just like, "What the like, what?" Like, this it just felt like they were like, "What do we do with this?" And go, "I know what we do." And, like, we'll have Gore Vidal eating dinner and have him give opinions. I was like, "What the" and I think, like, that kind of spurred even though I think I have the file somewhere, but I should do a review of it at some point because it made me think like I should do movies that I want to talk about, which is
Mhm.
why I think I said this to you in a stream that like the thing you should always do.
Yeah, it was the thing I asked you about on Saturday.
Yeah. So basically, my advice to this is sort of good advice, but it's what I learned when developing it. It's like if you want to start being a critic, now obviously,
Mhm,
if you're a critic, you can't do this all the time. But if you want to start being a critic, find a movie that you can talk about like that you like because there are movies like I would just want to talk about for hours and hours. And I was like, okay, those I'll make reviews on because then I'll like be able to figure out how to do this. And
mhm,
so Roma kind of helped because I remember I wanted to just tell someone because that Gore Vidal thing's funny. Like that's fun. And there's this cool scene where like they go underground and they find all these beautiful paintings that have been stuck underground that no one had found from hundreds of years and they're like admiring it and then all the paintings because they haven't seen oxygen, like, get destroyed because of the air. It's hard to
mhm.
describe, but it was just, like, one of
No,
those
I
scenes.
get it.
Yeah, yeah, and it was just, like, I don't know. It had a bunch of scenes, but it was basically, like, I'd see certain movies, and I also thought, I don't think everyone, at a dinner party wants to hear me go on and on about some random thing they've never heard of, so I thought it was a good outlet as well.
Mhm,
And I also just really like movies, and it gave me excuses to do things like in the early years. So between when I had a bunch of years that pre pizza party where I feel
mhm,
like I was just off in the ocean doing my own weird thing. And I didn't really have a focus and I wasn't in a YouTube community at all. You know what I mean? And I think when I repost those videos, I'm sure that some of them they used to have pictures and that didn't really work. And then I was like, okay, well, like I'll make music. So all my which I hope the music doesn't annoy people. It seems like
Oh,
people like
I
it a lot.
like the Mando one that you
Oh, the
did,
man. Oh,
actually.
okay. Thank you. But the background, I made all the music for it. So at first it didn't have music; it had pictures. Then it had music, and then originally it was standing up for some reason. I don't know why. And then I was like, start sitting down, and I had like the specific chair and all this stuff, and it just slowly developed. But I think the first couple years it was sort of like not. I was maybe too concerned with like my own cinephilia than like what the I think you have to have a good balance, you know what I mean?
Mhm,
And I was, like, not very concerned with that, and I also, like I don't think I watched enough internet people then, because I did, like, this whole series in, like, starting I do series where I'd focus on a director,
mhm.
and I'd
Yeah, I
literally
went
watch
back and I looked at, like I think I looked at, like, your channel from, like, oldest to newest, and I mean, it starts off with some amazing gems, like your King Ralph video.
Oh, thank you.
That is a classic, and then it just, it goes on to you doing reviews, and it's like it keeps going, and it's like, wow, you actually get more organ because I wanted to see it like when is like the video where people found you from Pan's video, which we'll probably touch you in a bit. Looking through like August 2012, and I'm like, wow, Jim starts to become more like the Jim today. Kind of after that, if that makes sense. Like you would
Yeah,
do monthly updates. You would do like it would sometimes it would just be the poster. Sometimes it would be black and white. You had different eras of thumbnails.
yeah, the thumbnails were oh, yeah, well, first, I just didn't have thumbnails
Mhm.
because 'cause you'd have to have it in the middle of the well, when I started, you couldn't do a real thumbnail then. There was that, um, and I think the thumbnail thing, I think it took me I don't think I'm really great at it now, but I'm better at it than I was, which was just for a while, it was nothing, and it
Your
became
three movie crap, three static images. I like that.
oh, no, see, that's I'm still but I still work on that. That's still because 'cause I'm not a graphic designer. The movie crap one's kind of its own works, but the regular one, sometimes it's hard to find the right frame when you wanna text on the right side, but then I wasn't as concerned, but then I started doing the poster with the image that Earl drew for me, because for a while, it was
Mhm.
just me with Buster, because everyone loved that photo, and I was like, "Well, it's me with a cat. Who wouldn't love that?" I was also like, I did new movies, but I did like, I do a John Carpenter series. I relaunched John Carpenter, but I did William Wellman, who's an old Hollywood director. It was like a dream to follow an old Hollywood director from beginning to end, even though
Mhm.
they have like that guy has like 80 movies. But it was kind of more of a film knowledge thing, and I got a lot of
Mhm.
deep cinephile respect, but not, views or attention. And like literally a couple months before I was on Pizza Party, I was on this cinephile
Oh
podcast thing.
yeah, I found that. It was like
You did?
cinema. I think it was on you. I think I
Oh,
did find it.
what was it? Illusion Travels by Streetcar? You found that?
I think it was in one of your monthly updates. You were like on a podcast. I can't remember what it was.
Okay.
I think you had the link to it.
Yeah. So
I gotta go
that
back.
podcast, the podcast I made might not be there, but it was like some deep, like people who write in smart film magazines, like Sight and Sound and stuff, kind of podcast. And I basically had to like do like studying. Like I was like it was
Mhm.
like Rocky, but just me watching movies and like reading film essays and stuff. And so it was like probably the best training before starting with Pizza Party, but it was like I think I was on it in July, the other podcast. So it was kind of like that's sort of where it looked like I was going, and then the pan thing happened. I think it was October, November, October. So
I
it's
think
like
yeah, because I
right.
think he talks about you in like August, and then you kind of come on October. That was part one of my interview with Jim Gisrel. Part two should be coming out soon. I also want to say if you want to look for Jim's content, his movie reviews, you can go check his YouTube channel at Jim Gisrel on YouTube. His movie reviews are great. Go check them out. I also want to thank him just for coming on the show. It was really quite an honor. He's such a good guest. I also want to thank Ananta Smith for creating the music and Andrew Chico for designing the logo. Please check out my Instagram at Callback on Twitter as well as YouTube. And I'll see you next time on Callbacks.